Hi guys, Paul from Four-Wheel Drive here, and today's masterclass is really more a discussion and demonstration around how to utilise the motor system effectively to increase run time, reduce noise pollution, and surf etiquette relating to how those two interact, and going from four-wheel driving to normal free-foiling without the motor, and coming from free-foiling back into four-wheel driving, that transition period. So we're going to go through some of these subject matters and hopefully you get something useful out of it. Okay, so what's the difference between four-wheel driving and free-foiling? Well, effectively, it's when you're utilising the motor to push yourself through the water, that's four-wheel driving, and then free-foiling is when you've shut the motor down and you're using the free part of the mast to just pure foil. What we're finding is globally, four-wheel drive's taking off and there's thousands and thousands of units all over the world, and we're trying to educate our customer base on how to use the four-wheel drive equipment appropriately and get the best out of it, because there's really a win-win situation here. So one of the first subject matters is understanding the difference of how the propellers interact with the water. There is a difference between a three-blader and a two-blader, and we're going to show you that later in the water. But what we're really talking about is when the propeller system comes in and out of the water, and that transition period from really good engaged propeller thrust and an aerated thrust, where the propeller may be half in and out of the water, and that interaction period from when it's coming from the air into the water. So I know that sounds a bit convoluted, but really there is quite a big difference between the propeller being fully loaded and being able to use the energy that's going into that propeller system effectively and converting that into thrust, where it's really just pushing water. When you start to have the water level coming from fully submerged to not quite fully submerged, and the propeller system starts to break free of having a pure laminar flow around it, it can spool up very quickly because it becomes unloaded as it goes from pushing a liquid to some liquid and some air. And that's when you get this sort of cavitation effect, where the motor's like row, 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 and it sort of pushes water and it speeds up and down. It's not overly complicated, but sometimes it's just seeing as understanding, oh, okay, I get the point now. And you can go out and try that and get some better use out of your system, and also give some respect to the other non-powered foilers out there and surfers. So each kit comes with a two-blader, and the three-blader is an optional extra. What's the difference between the two? This has been covered in numerous other videos, but for today's purpose, the two-blader will have a different sound and a different interaction with the water when it's coming in and out versus the three-blader. The three-blader generally has a lower RPM because there's an extra blade that has to be pushed through the water, so it spins slower. So the lower spinning RPM of this one has a reduced noise effect, whereas the higher pitch or higher speed two-blader can produce more noise if used incorrectly. So there really is a noise effect between the two, but there's also a thrust and efficiency effect. The two-blader can be more efficient in high-speed applications where you're wanting to continuously go at a higher speed, whether you're four-wheel driving around or you're trying to drop into a bigger wave that's moving quicker. Sometimes the two-blade's more effective, but the three-blader is more efficient across the board unless you're trying to go into that high-speed range, which is where the two-blader comes back into effect. So I've got two different masts here. Obviously the aluminium mast is an integrated mast, so I've got the motor at 20 centimeters, and I have the luxury of having no cable behind the mast. And then on my right here I have the Ultra, which is set up for some downwinding runs, where I've got it set up at a 15 centimeter position, so it's slightly higher, closer to the board, but I do have the exposed cable. Being a carbon mast, you can't put the cable inside of it. So these will have two very different interactions with the water. The integrated mast is going to have laminar flow water collapsing around here and laminar flow water collapsing around here, because there's no difference between the top and the bottom. Whereas on this one here, I'm going to have laminar flow here, but I'm definitely not going to have laminar flow when the water has to collapse around the cable. So what that does is it actually aerates the water up the top, and it doesn't aerate down here. So as this propeller blade spins through this rotation, this blade up top is going to be spitting a bit more air and water out than the blades down the bottom, which are more likely to be pushing unaerated water. So expect to have a noisier ride and more aeration when you've got an external cable than you do with an integrated. It's not necessarily one's better or worse, it's just if you are trying to reduce noise because you're in a crowded lineup and you're wanting to be courteous of others, sometimes it's better to choose either a lower motor position, sort of lowered towards the wing, or trying to run an integrated if you can. If you don't have that choice, then there's other options about running the board lower in the water, or just idling along on your belly to go out through, and then getting up and off we go from there if you have a really high motor position towards the board set up like that. So there's definitely a trade-off between going too short and then inducing less push and drive and more noise, and then going longer, having less free usable mast, but you do reduce noise and you get more push and more efficiency. So there's always a trade-off. Like in anything in foiling, you choose one aspect over here, you might lose some over here, and you're always doing that trade. So again, this is just tips and tricks about how to consider what you need out of your gear, where you are, who you're around, and what you're trying to achieve. So if you're learning to foil and you're sort of early in your foil driving career, a motor position that's further away from the board is definitely going to be easier to handle. We've seen instances where people try go to short cables too quickly too soon, and they really struggle with that height control, which comes with time. So if you're learning, I recommend running the motor further down towards the wing and giving yourself more opportunity to find your position as to where you're foiling above the water. It just makes life easier. Over time, as you progress and get better and better, you're going to want to explore with motor positions closer towards the board, shorter and shorter cables. Just take your time and get used to that. If you also want to make it easier, try running the 3-blader when you're learning, because it's more forgiving and it does less over revving, which I'm going to show you in the water, where your prop comes out of the water. It doesn't spin up as quick because it's already operating at a slower RPM. Some people will know what I'm talking about when I talk about the brap, brap, brap. That's when people are holding too much throttle on and they've got the motor engaged and then they're struggling with pitch control and it's coming in and out, in and out, in and out of the water. And what's happening there is if you hold too much throttle on, when this motor goes from pushing a liquid and then it breaches into the air, a liquid is 600 times more dense than air. This poor motor has got no option but to spin right up really quickly. When you submerge the motor, aerates the water, then the prop finally grips up and then bam, you get all this extra thrust. And when you get that extra pushing force, it wants to tilt the wing like that. You rise back up because you've given it attitude, and then you lose that thrust. It wants to tilt forward, and then you submerge back into the water, the prop loads back up again, more thrust, tilt back, and it's a reciprocating issue. You're doing this, basically. If you dial the throttle back, that effect of it coming in and out will dramatically reduce, and then you can find that sort of sweet spot where you're not doing it as much. So with the HP motor, the one without the sticker, in contrast to the standard one with the sticker, you notice it's a bit taller, but the main difference between the two is that this one has significantly more torque, which means the RPM delta of when it comes in and out of the water really reduces, because you've got the throttle on, you're engaged with the water, you're pushing water and it comes out. It's not going to spool up and the RPM isn't going to come up as much. As the smaller motors just have less torque, that RPM delta comes back out. So you get all the added benefits of extra run time, more thrust and more power and more torque. But one of the side benefits is it's actually a quieter running motor for those reasons. What this really boils down to is there's an opportunity for every foil driver to improve their runtime, improve the efficiency and the usage of your battery capacity, improve the experience for other people in the water by reducing noise, and also to just get better use out of your gear. I've had many years of foil driving with customers and friends, and sometimes just simple little tricks that aren't immediately obvious can make a big difference to their session and everyone else's. It's all about tips and tricks and just sharing with the community to get the best out of your foil drive. Let's get in the water. Too much throttle, and you can hear it's super aggressive, and it's just pitching me up and down like crazy. Just versus back the throttle off, and even if I let the motor come up and breach, I'm not surging as much. Turn around. Now I'm going to go too much throttle again. Just ridiculous. It's just too much. I back the throttle down. And even if the motor comes in and out of the water a bit like it is now, totally manageable because I'm not getting that aggressive surge. So I come up, down, up, down. It's okay, but it's noisy. It's noisy, so I don't want to do that. Pre-spool. Do that again. So if I'm already on foil, like this, pre-spool, drop the motor in. But in the two blader I need about 65–66% throttle, and I'm just happily cruising. I'm not getting oversped or stalling at about 66 to 68 into the wind. So this is the motor submerged, and it's nice and quiet, and I'm deliberately trying to keep the motor in the water. Now I'm going to come around and I'm paying less attention, and the motor's coming in and out a lot, and I'm spitting all that water coming out the back is wasted energy. So now I'm going to slow it down and look, with much less water coming out the rear because I'm a lot less pitch sensitive. Too much throttle again. Crazy. Back it off. Nice and gentle. Also, when you're running at a lower throttle, just nice and cruisy, it's way easier to move your feet around. I can come in nice and close. Feet are almost, well, they're way too close really. But you've got more time to move your feet around because you're not over spinning the motor. If you want to build up speed and breach out of the water to go to clean mast, deliberately hold the motor down, full boost, and then pop at the same time you drop the throttle. And if you do it right, you can actually dump the throttle with no noise. Ready? So full throttle, motor down, pop. full throttle, jump and pop. Whoop. I do that when I go past surfers. Here's a wave coming here. Throttle. So that I did a little bit late, and you can hear the cavitation. So cavitation sounded noisy this time. Okay, so I've just put the 3-blader on. I'm going to go around and have a go on that. I will mention that I just spent so much time then with the 2-blader deliberately over revving it and making it, doing the bucking bronco so much. That creates harmonic resonance, and it can actually make bolts want to undo themselves because you're basically vibrating them at all sorts of different frequencies. So I don't normally do that, so my bolts in my pod very rarely ever come loose, but I have noticed that just from that session, some of the little bolts in the pod need to be nipped up and tightened from just that one session. There we go, that one's quite loose. If I didn't do the bucking bronco and I was using the motor properly, I wouldn't need to tighten the bolts. And I check them from time to time, they're never loose, but if I do that type of stuff, they come loose. All right, so I'm cruising nice and gentle. And if I breach the motor in and out, which I'm doing now, it's just docile. It's not as aggressive because the RPM isn't picking up and down really aggressive. Now if I give it full throttle in a second, it's going to give it full throttle now. It still does the bucking bronco. What do you expect? The motor's loading up too much. Back it off. Just a nice sedate 60, 65, something like that, depending on your body weight. And it's chill. Now if I deliberately let it go up and down, like I am now, it doesn't really surge on me as much. It just sort of stays at a more constant speed. Also, don't be afraid to use your knees to absorb surface detail in the water. So this is quite choppy. I'm deliberately pitch controlling the board, trying to stay at a constant height above the water, and I know I'm achieving that if I can't really hear the motor surging that much. So this is quite choppy here. See, I can't really hear the motor that much, and I've got good drive. I've got nice, good, positive thrust. My speed isn't changing much because I'm putting all of that thrust into good use. Now if I start taking less care, like I am now, and I can hear all the surging because my motor's half in, half out, my speed is changing, my pitch control is reducing, and it's just worse. Here's a little wave, boost, pop. Pre-spool, drop it in. You can pre-spool and get that muscle memory in your finger. I just innately know where it is to about 60% throttle. So I'm gonna pre-spool, and when that motor drops in, there's no surging because I'm already at the right RPM. So actually this will be a good shot. So I'm going to pop up, I'm going to not pre-spool, now I have to slam the throttle, sort of get going again. Awkward, not efficient. Then this time around I'm going to pre-spool, but I'm going to pre-spool with too much throttle. Alright, pre-spool, too much throttle. Far out, crazy, too much. And then this time I'll pre-spool, 62% throttle. My normal percentage. So pop up, pre-spool, smooth takeaway. Almost felt like nothing happened. I just kept going. It's actually a really nice feeling to, let's do it again. So dump it and then pop, no noise, pre-spool. Oh, buttery smooth. Come get some. I just think it feels great. If you can also remember to build your speed, then pop, you can actually do it absolutely silently, which I think is fun. It's just fun as well. So do it again, pre-spool, pop, pre-spool the motor, nice smooth reconnection with the water, and I just flow away. Like nothing ever happened. Over the wave, pre-spool, drop it in. All right. Pop over the wave, re-spool, engage again. Pop over the wave, pre-spool, back again. Here we go. Speed up. Pop, glide over the top, pre-spool, re-engage. Coming in horizontal, side onto the wave, speed, pop. Now that was a bit lazy, I could hear the motor cavitating. I didn't have my pitch and height that well controlled. Improve upon that. Speed, pop, almost silent. Okay, so hopefully that was useful. I know some of this stuff might be like really obvious to certain viewers that have already gone through this transition period, but we have to remember that this product is going all over the world and there's more and more people getting into it, and it still surprises me to this day after going to a lot of events and demos and trial days and that sort of stuff, just how often people are just holding on too much throttle. It's a lot to take in when you're trying to get used to a whole new technique and technology, and it is easy to get complacent and pin that throttle and just be going too hard. So hopefully that was reasonably obvious to see the sheer difference between too much throttle, spooling that prop up and just pushing water out for no good reason, and backing it off and making everything more chilled and relaxed and easy. So please remember that. You're going to reduce noise, you're going to improve the experience for others around you, but you're also going to get a huge benefit for yourself. You're going to get more run time, less wear and tear in your gear, and it's going to feel more natural and smooth. I personally love coming off a wave, pre-spooling that prop to the perfect percentage, and just feeling like nothing happened. It just perfectly transitions into the water and just cruise away. I actually really like doing that. So hopefully some of these little tips and tricks are useful. Go out there and practice it and enjoy it. Remember to play around with the 3 and the 2 blades and enjoy that. And thanks for listening. This video was derived from questions coming in from customers wanting to hear a little bit more about it. So hopefully those who are watching it got something out of it. Thanks very much. See you next time. What? This is Paul Martin reporting for 4Drive, live from the beach. Don't put that in.